Hello, everybody, and welcome to the first of the RTS Student Masterclasses for 2020. I'm Emma Reed, and I'm going to be chairing this fascinating masterclass. Like so many things this year, obviously remotely, so no show of hands, but you can virtually put your hand up by asking a question at any time in the chat facility online on the RTS website, which no doubt everyone's quite familiar with nowadays. And I'll give some time for questions and answers. If there's something pertinent to what we're talking about, I'll come to. Otherwise, towards the end of the session, there'll be plenty of time to ask questions as well of our two fantastic contributors. So we're year with two women who've made their careers behind the camera in what's often been over the years, especially in my experience, a very male-dominated world for whatever reason. They are camera, I'm not going to say operators, because one is a director of photography, and that's Nicola Daley, who is responsible for amazing photography on dramas such as Harlots, that we watch here at the moment on BBC Two. She discovered how much she loved filming when she was studying for a degree in film and American studies in California, and then went to Australia, where MA in cinematography, is that correct? And recently she switched, and she started doing some documentaries, and now she's firmly in the world of drama. So that's Nicola on the right of your screen. Say hi, Nicola.
Hi.
And I'd also like to welcome Georgina Kidrovsky, who's on the factual side of telly. She's a shooting PD who grew up and always wanted to be a camera operator. She trained at Tees Television before going on to a career in factual telly. She loves being in a helicopter, being adventurous, being in really awful places that I'm watching and she likes being in, such as The Island, Race Across the World, Escape with Ant Middleton, and Hunted. So welcome both of you, and shall we kick off by starting with you, George? Tell us how you actually got into something which is a really skilled and specialist job.
Okay, hi guys, nice to be here. So I always wanted to work in TV from a young age, and the sole drive for this decision was watching Top of the Pops when I was about 6 or 7, and seeing the camera operators running around the stage, and I thought, if I get a job in camera, I will never have to pay to see live music again. So that was the key drive. And I then spent my childhood sort of with tissue boxes and toilet roll tubes stuck to the front, just running around the house, living the dream. So that was the sole drive behind my desire to work in TV. I sort of spent a lot of my time at school making little projects and things like that. But it was interesting what you said, Emma, about TV and sort of the camera role traditionally being a very male-dominated role. Because I remember going to my careers teacher at the girls' school I went to, and telling them I was going to be a cameraman, because that was the word that was used in that role. And I was told it was too difficult, and promptly given a load of flyers to be a hairdresser and sent on my way. And I was absolutely devastated. Luckily, I didn't pay any attention. And I sort of worked up, getting lots of work experience throughout school and college. I got, at the age of 16, I got a very unusual position where I used to go and watch the ice hockey at the arena in Manchester, and there was I would see the camera crews filming for the video walls, following the live action, and I wrote a letter to ask if I could go and get some work experience, and got a letter in return telling me that this was a list of dates that I was working. So I sort of turned up, blagged my way through it. They realised very quickly that I was just a child and had very little camera experience. But they proceeded to let me have a go anyway, and then sort of found myself in this strange role where I'd go along and do the warm up, and all the camera guys would give me a hand. And that led into my first sort of job at Tees Television, which I applied for in my second year at university. in a sort of it was a multi-skilled environment that we worked in, with a key skill, mine being camera, and then we worked in other areas as well. So I spent a lot of time mostly working with the camera department and working on my camera skills.
Brilliant. So, Nicola, your journey into television, same enthusiasm, same passion, but you've gone down a very pure role of director of photography rather than bothering with all that nonsense of editorial thought. Concentrating on making beautiful pictures. Tell us how you got into that.
I, unlike George, I always watched movies when I was a kid, but I didn't necessarily think, nobody in my sort of family was in the film business or TV. And so it wasn't something that I really thought, oh, you know, that's something I could do. But I loved films. And I as you said in your introduction, I studied American studies and films theory, which meant that I ended up in the University of California at Santa Cruz doing practical courses, and they had film cameras, they had non-linear edit suites, and I think I shot maybe about 5 people's films, and I suddenly thought, oh, you know, is this a job? I really hope this is a job, because this is really what I want to do, and it sort of captured my imagination. So from then on, from 21, that's when I really decided that was my sort of career drive. And when I came back to London, I met Michael Saracen, who probably a lot of you know is a very big BSc cinematographer. And I had a coffee with him and I said, how do I get into the camera crews? How do I even start? And he said, well, there's kind of 2 routes that you can do. You can work your way up the camera department, clapper loader in those days, because it was film, and then focus puller. Or you could work at a rental house. And so in sort of my other life, I ended up in Sydney in Australia, and that's what I did. I worked in a rental house, and I started on reception because I was that desperate to do any job that they had. And I answered the phones, and I worked my way through what we call prep, which is where you take apart cameras and put them back together, and then client contact. So I was there for 3 years, and it was a brilliant piece of advice that he had, because I learned all the technical stuff. I learned all the cameras, dollies, lights that they had, and so it was a really good grounding. And then after that, I went and was a clapper loader on film, and a few years after that, I went to film school.
So that's really interesting, isn't it? Listening to you both, you know, your early ways into the industry, how training is just so important to make sure that you get that kind of basis. It's a bit like being at primary school, and you have to do addition and taking away before you can manage multiplication and long division. And I think that you know, a lot of, you know, myself included, we're ambitious. We want to get on. We want to do it. But it's very important to make sure that you get that grounding, and you know, so that when the problems arise, or you're on your own on an island or something, you know, you actually have solutions up your sleeve. Your thoughts on that, Nicola?
Absolutely. I think the film school that I went to in Sydney, which was the National Australian Film School, they wouldn't let you in at that time unless you'd been a camera assistant. So they were looking for people not straight out of university, but you'd had that sort of real world experience, if you like. So it was really important to them that you'd worked in a camera crew, and you knew how to work on set, and because it's such a specific place to be, with a hierarchy and a way of working, that they wanted that before you even thought about being a cinematographer. So I think it was a really good way to sort of accept people through the system.
And George, obviously, in being a shooting PD, it's a very much less structured, even though you started at Tyne Tees, would have some training. I mean, nowadays, for anyone starting, it's so hard. There's very, very little in the way of structuring unless you go and pay for it yourself. So, you know, it's a much more kind of organic environment. You know, it's something obviously I'm in the factual world, so I understand how difficult that can be for people. But you know, how do you marry that kind of excellence in shooting and the continual editorial thinking? And that's something you can't just gain overnight, is it?
No, and it is very difficult. You know, as you said, our roles are sort of very different. And I think with regards to training and sort of keeping skills current in any role, it's a constant learning curve. Really, the technology changes all the time, and so I know I very much have to sort of take that on myself rather than it being the responsibility of any sort of employer. I sort of try and keep up with what's going on with new cameras, and I'm very lucky that I know some excellent DOPs who've got camera skills which are way beyond mine. I'm constantly picking their brains, you know, for ways I can improve my shooting. And I think that's just something, you know, in the industry you sort of have to do, and that sort of camera specific training is significantly less, particularly in my role. Yeah, and as you said, you know, my role is very different in that I have to concentrate on the editorial as well. So it is that constant balance of keeping up with shooting trends and equipment, but also keeping your head in the editorial game at the same time. And that is sometimes a very tricky balance to get right.
Well, let's have a look at just how tricky it can be with your first clip, George, of the island. So if our team of technical people would like to play the island, that would be brilliant. This is a really good example of how you have to be on it, both technically and editorially and creatively all the time.
In the jungle,
the mighty jungle,
the lion sleeps tonight. Oh, wimbo it, oh, wimbo it, oh, wimbo it.
It's the women's 5th day on the island. And the two groups have been separated for over 2 days. Spirits are buoyed with bottles full of rainwater, but the expedition party are going round in circles, trying to return to camp to rescue the women waiting.
We want to stay in a straight line.
Nobody's disagreeing with you. We will have to make little diversions.
No, that way.
Mum of 2, Kate, remains desperately homesick, missing her family.
Just do my din. Oh, because I'm not doing another night in this jungle like this. That will be it for me. And I've made that decision. If we don't make it back...
feel strongly about it now?
Yeah, and I know the people who matter to me the most won't care if I come home early. To be honest.
Kate, calm down. We're going the right direction. It might not be...
I'm not talking
like
to
a
you.
path.
I'm talking to George.
I know. Fucking attitude and a half. You do.
And you can kiss my fucking ass.
If these women are going to survive, they've got to learn quickly how to work together as a team.
Pulling together is paramount in times of crisis.
And the truth is, we always survive better when we cooperate and when we don't fight.
There's only, please, no negativity. We'll just need to keep on this positively.
I know. You've got a really bad attitude, Kate.
You know.
I haven't. I'm just fed up.
You're speaking to everyone with a really bad tone, so...
Can everybody please stop arguing, because it's really not helping. But maybe we should just, for the next 10 minutes, all of us just say completely nothing and just concentrate on walking and following Fee.
No, that way. Guys, I think we need to go that way.
Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on.
So 10 minutes silence. I'm asking a few group of women to keep silent for the mission. We lasted literally 10 minutes. Everyone could hide in. Yeah. 10 seconds.
So clearly, a big example of not only having to deal with all those contributors on your own and a difficult bunch of people in a very difficult and demanding situation, but also having to keep your wits about you and making sure you shoot that scene. So tell us a little bit about how what your thought processes are while you're doing that, how you're managing to capture the scene, what you might be, how you might be shooting that.
Yeah, so that was quite a long while ago. I still shudder when I see it, but that was with working for Shine TV, and I have to say I absolutely love working for them. They're the only production company who send you out with a full arsenal of kit and a machete when you go on a shoot with them. So it's always fun working with them. The role there was as what's called an embedded shooting PD. And you know, as you saw in the clip there, the idea is that you have a team of TV professionals who live with the contributors 24 hours a day in exactly the same situation that they're in. So we didn't get any extra food, no comfy hotel room to go to. We just had to do as they did. And that way of making TV, I think The Island was probably one of the first shows. I know there have been others, but I think The Island was possibly one of the first shows where they did that in that truly embedded sense, in such a dramatic environment, really. And it is such a different way of storytelling. I don't even really know where to begin, because all of the things that you see there, sort of the discomfort, the lack of food, the lack of sense of direction. You know, all those aspects become as much of your day as they do for the contributors. And whereas usually we'd sort of, as storytellers, sort of look in on a group of people, we do a bit of research, become very quick experts about whatever they're going through, and then comment. In that sort of embedded role, you're forced to experience their discomfort in such a way that you can truly tell the story. You can truly tell the story because you understand it. You know, you really do get a 360-degree experience on that kind of shoot.
And well, obviously you've got to come back with the right shots. You know, the edit can't just ring you up and say, "Oh, can you get another wide shot and a few GVs, and could you redo that interview with that woman, please?" So you know, you're thinking editorially, you're thinking edit the whole time. But in terms of actual camera work, I imagine that being on a tropical island is actually quite difficult.
Yeah, and I mean, thank God for their edit team, because they do an incredible job. You sort of look back at some of the work on that, and I think I blame it on being hungry. But yeah, they do an incredible job. But it is, you know, like on the show, there are effectively cameras. You know, we're shooting 24 hours a day. We really are. If something's happening, we're shooting. There was a team of four crew there and 10 contributors, but everybody is given cameras to use. So the contributors are given a little training course on how to operate cameras at the same time. But the rules are very clear from the start. If you're going anywhere and you're doing anything, and it doesn't matter whether you're just going for a walk to cool off or you're going to go and try and find some food, you've got to have a camera with you. And so you know, there's GoPros and all kinds of little waterproof cameras and sort of small, easy to carry cameras, as well as sort of the 4 professional cameras that we were using on the island. But yeah, we're shooting 24 hours a day, and you know, it's one of the most difficult jobs I've ever done, because I can tell you, after 6 weeks of not eating, picking up a GoPro becomes difficult. So yeah, luckily though, you know, you just have to remember what you're there for and how much you wanted to do the job in the first place. And that TV instinct is probably a little bit stronger than the survival instinct, it turns out. So I think we did all right.
And how was it trying to control the women to try and remember to keep the GoPros on? You know, were they as assiduous as you were?
It was a nightmare in parts, I won't lie. Some of them actually, there was a couple of them who loved it and would quite happily, you know, have worked around the clock as well. They quite enjoyed shooting. But yeah, it was so difficult and frustrating, because, you know, it's very easy to sort of battle with the bits that they want, that they're supposed to be doing, and when you've slept. But when you're finding camera being kicked down, covered in sand, abandoned in trees, batteries all over the place. I mean, it's just, it breaks you out in a sweat. And it was really difficult. And but yeah, we you know, we tried to create devices to make that manageable. But yeah, it very, very difficult. And in monsoon season, you know, we know and bad weather doesn't mix very well. So trying to do that where there's sand and monsoon in monsoon season, it's very difficult.
And you know, as a PD, that you know, just want to dig into just a little bit more that that balance that you have to strike between thinking program content and thinking shooting. So, you know, quite often it's very hard. You have to have two brains. You have to be thinking about the shot, the composition. You have to be thinking about, you know, the creating a sequence and making sure you've got enough shots. But at the same time, you're worrying about having to use a machete to get through, you know, a forest and control some arguing women, and make sure that you're capturing and producing as well. You know, it's not just following the action there, is it? So, you know, how do you manage that as a PD? What are your tips?
It's very difficult, because of course when you're living with these people as well, you definitely have to work with them, and you know, you're living next to them, so they've got to trust you, they've got to want to tell you their story, and you've got to want them to allow you to film, which it's an unusual situation to be in, where, you know, someone's crying and wanting to go home in the middle of the night and it's throwing it down, and you're trying to keep a camera dry and you're trying to film that because it's really important, and you're trying to keep warm, and you're trying to stop a fire from going out, and you're trying to do a million other things at once. And I think it's an exceptionally difficult balance to get right. And you know, at the time we did that, there wasn't a huge amount of examples to follow, because, you know, they'd done a men's island and they were great, but it was a very new concept. I think you always have to have your mind on the story and what's happening. I think experiencing the island yourself meant that you could turn all of the negative and difficult things into the story you wanted to tell. So rather than just feeling, you know, I'm feeling a bit grumpy, these women are doing my head in, I'm very tired, I'm freezing cold and I just want to sleep, that could, you know, in real life, that would make you want to go away from that situation. But I think sort of whilst making the island, you have to stop and go, okay, well, if I'm feeling all of these things, these people are definitely feeling these things. They're not being paid to be here, for starters, so they're probably feeling it a lot more strongly than I am. And then sort of being able to step back and look at the situation and figure out how you can tell that story. You know, keeping the cameras dry, that's just luck of the draw. But
okay. Yes, keeping cameras dry, keeping sand out of it, yeah, all of that. So moving from one situation where there's virtually no control over what's going on around you, or trying to exert control over it, to the more manageable perhaps, but programming that Nicola works on, features and drama and comedy, your first comedy on Australia, The Letdown, and how when you are there to do a very specific job and make it look as fabulous as possible, because no one, you know, is going to give you any prizes if you kind of go, oh, it was wobbly because there was a spider in the room or whatever. So let's have a look at a different end of cinematography and The Letdown, which was Nicola's first TV drama job.
What's that?
We've found Pepe Le Pew. It's just adorable.
Mum, you can't watch that today. He's a would-be rapist. The cat spends every ep running for her life from a sexual predator.
Oh, he's just amorous. Gosh, you're a bore. You need to go to Paris. Mummy's no fun since she had you.
Time's up, Peppy. Put a bing on. There's no non-consensual rape. Oh, sorry, Sue. No, yep. Oh, no, I was just talking to my mother.
I love my life. All right? Yeah, I chose this.
Okay.
Put that on a hanger. Saves on ironing.
All right.
That 5 o'clock glass of wine, that's for me. That's for Barb. It's just, I'm starting earlier and finishing later.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know, I need to find...
A rat park.
Sorry?
So your kids obviously have a rat park and it's a very finely constructed one. Where is yours? What do you do that's just for you that doesn't involve double fisting Pinot Gris? Think.
I honestly don't know.
Now we're getting some honesty. Okay, so peel it back. What did you used to do before you had kids? What was that?
Drinks and dancing with the girls.
No, no booze in Rat Park.
Stop saying Rat Park.
Rat Park.
Well,
You're a good husband. I have to go and do my face.
Oh, come on. Creams. Oh.
Honey?
That was quick. Oh my God!
It's a sheet mask. It's just like all my creams in one. Much quicker.
Oh, I'm gonna have nightmares.
No, you're not. I can still kiss. Close your eyes. How's that?
Brilliant. Looks very amusing. So, Nicola, this was your first job in TV drama, having moved into drama from documentaries. So, take us through what you feel you brought to it, the challenges that created for you, and the kind of step up to and turn it into something that looks great.
Thank you. It's interesting, Emma, that you were saying it was controllable, because we had 1-year-olds in it, so it was really quite uncontrollable actually, and we had so many of them, because if this is series 2, and so in series 1, which I didn't do, they were tiny little babies and slept a lot in the actor's arms kind of thing, so it was a bit more manageable. But in series 2 they're all 1, so there was a lot of screaming, and often babies are played by twins, so one would come on, given to the actor, scream, and then that one would be taken off by the mum or the nurse, and then the second one would come on and that would scream. And so you're trying to sort of shoot 8 or 10 pages a day, which is a lot in drama, and you've got all these screaming babies, and the crew sort of standing around going, right, how are we going to get out of this? How can we shoot around a screaming kid? Or what's the opening of the scene where she can put the baby down and get it out of shot? And then we can carry on with the dialogue and the humor and all that stuff. But so yeah, not that controllable, but it was so much fun to work on the show. And the challenge for me was that I'd done, coming out of film school, I'd done a lot of documentaries, about 10 years worth. But I'd also been doing feature films at the same time. So I think at this point I'd done 4 features. But TV was really quite difficult for me to get into. I sort of came up against all these gatekeepers where they were saying, you've never done TV drama, so you can't do it. And it was really hard for me to even sort of get in the room and get an interview. So the Letdown was sort of a lucky break, really, because I knew the producer. I'd never worked with her before in Australia, but she contacted me and said, do you want to come? I was in England at the time, and she said, do you want to come back to Sydney and shoot Letdown? And it's such a funny show that I jumped at the chance. And it was so interesting after having that on my CV, because then it suddenly said Netflix on my CV. And then even though my show reel hadn't changed, nothing about me had changed, but just having this sort of stamp of Netflix meant that all these other doors opened to all the others. I know. So it's part of going through the stages of your career. There's sort of gatekeepers, and you have to, because you can do it, you can shoot. So it's, it was quite a challenge to get that. But once that was on my CV, then it was, some more doors opened. But it was quite a struggle to get that first TV drama job.
Definitely. And one of the things on this was that it's multi-camera, isn't it? Or 2 cameras at least, rather than the single camera. So how did you adapt your style and your thinking to that? Obviously lots of teamwork involved.
Yes, exactly. I'd done a couple of things that were 2 cameras, but not a lot. So I guess that was a big challenge for me. But I had a great team. Often in Britain and in Australia, as a DP, you operate as well. So you do have to split your brain between operating and lighting and setting up all the shots for everyone. So that can be quite challenging. Whereas I did a show in America called Paradise Lost, and they wouldn't actually, the union wouldn't let me operate. So I sort of sat behind a desk looking at these monitors for 4 months and missing camera operating, but you could really concentrate on your lighting, which was amazing. But in the UK and Australia, that's not, the budgets are a bit smaller. So, but then, you know, I love to operate because you get to, because I come from docs like George, I was used to, I'd done a lot of ob docs, so I was used to being right there in the scene all the time with the emotion. And that's one of the things I love with actors, is being there, sort of being the first audience member, if you like, to look, you know, looking down the viewfinder and seeing their performance is quite, you can sort of get that emotional connection, and it's quite, can be quite a thrill to see that performance sort of unfold.
Definitely. And, you know, a lot of people listening today, you know, who are eager to develop their skills, whether it be in factual or in drama, you know, one of the big things that I find with a lot of shooting PDs in my world is that they're very keen to learn more and experiment with lenses. Obviously, you know, there's a little bit of a kind of cachet around lenses that if you know all about lenses, you must be really good. But obviously the proof is in the pudding. So how would you, Nicola, advise people to get a little bit of experience or shoot, you know, in lenses, and where to look and, you know, what to read?
I think, I mean, when I started, it was all film and you had to sort of beg and borrow to get a film camera and everything. So I think now it being so accessible in terms of whether it be a 5D or a Handycam or even your phone, I think just practice, that's the main thing. I mean, I learned so much by doing docs. As George was saying a little bit before, you have to edit in your head when you shoot a doc and when you're right there in the scene observing something as it's happening. And they always say if you want to learn to be a cinematographer, then you have to learn to edit. And I think that skill that I got to learn to edit in my head as I was shooting is indispensable now in drama, actually, because if time's running out and, you know, you've got 10 minutes left and you've got a little scene to do, you can work out, well, I need this over the shoulder, the reciprocal close-up, and then we could push in on the wide or whatever it is. You can work out very quickly what the coverage is that you need to tell the story and where the camera should be to tell the story in the best possible way. So I would just say practice. I mean, that's what we did when we started. At film school, we actually started doing docs and we would just go out and shoot. They would say, go and shoot the family lunch, Sunday lunch, you know, and try and observe it and just get all the shots that you need and then edit it. I mean, everybody can use some sort of online edit suite now and learn how to do it. I mean, it's so accessible. It's all about practice, I think, and learning. The more you do it, the more you learn the angle of view of different lenses. So a wide angle lens close up will give you a different feeling than a telephoto lens. And what is that feeling? And then if you practice all that, you'll soon find the feeling of that, and then you can utilize that in your work.
So, George, thinking about the island, what camera were you using on that?
On that, we were using the PMW 500s, and we had PMW.
Oh, really?
No, PMW, yeah, 500s, and we had 200s as well. And then we had a whole arsenal of cameras, which was so long ago, I can't tell you what they were, sort of little waterproof cameras. We had an endless supply of GoPros that we mixed. So we had a real collection of cameras there.
So well, let's look at your next clip now, Race Across the World. And, you know, it would be great to know kind of how you shot it in terms of what camera you were using, whether or not you even ever bothered with lenses, because, you know, you're on the go. It had some people to, you know, film in prison recently, and you know, there's a lot of walking around and you can't be changing lenses the whole time, but you want it to be on, because you can't include everybody in that scene, you want it to be you know, really focused on just the people that you're, so a real shallow depth of field. And it's like, oh my goodness, the number of, it's so hard to do. And that's exactly the sort of thing where, you know, you think, oh, I need a professional camera person here actually who's going to be able to do all that. But I'm not sure that it's easy for anybody to be able to do this kind of moving and using a fixed lens. And it's the kind of the art of the possible, really, isn't it? And let's watch Race Across the World, and we can physically see the difficulties you were faced with in trying to achieve that sense of adventure and movement, and how you achieved it. So let's watch Race Across the World.
The capital and largest city in Azerbaijan. Sitting 28 metres below sea level, it's the lowest lying capital in the world. The lowest lying team at the start of this leg were Tony and Elaine. Having made it to Baku, they received details of the checkpoint location on the only piece of technology permitted in the race, their GPS tracker.
Please proceed to Haydar.
Haydar Aliyev Centre.
Right, okay.
Can't wait to get to that hotel. I'll be straight in that pool if there is one.
I don't know whether there will be one.
I'll tell you what, a taxi would have been expensive. We've got these trains going 1,000,000 miles an hour and there's 7 stops. Do you know Haydar Aliyev Centre?
Come on.
Oh. That's it.
That's it. Over in here. What do you think it is?
I don't know. No idea.
That is something else.
Come on. Come on then, let's read this message. It should be in now because we're... Yeah, let's have a look. Look directly in front of you and you will see your next checkpoint, the Flame Towers Hotel. Which is in front, that way? Or that, is it, could it be this?
Yeah, this is it. This is it. Come on, come on, come on. Entrance, Flame Tower Hotel. Reception. Shit.
There's plenty more. Oh.
Welcome, Parent Baku.
Thank you.
It was a very nice to sign here, and you're first.
I'm just so relieved that we're still in this race.
And I just want now to maintain that pace and that energy all the way through now.
They will be absolutely floored.
I think they'll be
when they
quite
come in.
shocked that we came in first.
Yeah, I think they'll be
quite shocked.
Yeah.
Where are they? Come on, where are they?
Excellent series. 1 and 2, both very watchable programme. Before we just get into you, so just a call out to everybody who's listening. There's well over 100 people on this call at the moment, which is fabulous, but I'm sure you've all got some questions, so please do fire them in to the chat box, and then I can line them up to be answered in a while. Thank you very much. So, George, here we are in Baku with this lovely couple, and you're on the whole time. How are you shooting it, and how are you thinking? So, the drama is kind of like motivating itself, really. A lot of you following them. So, time to think about your shooting a great deal. So, how did you do it?
So we had a lot of kit to carry around with us. We were shooting on the A7S, and we also had an FS5 in our bags. There was myself, and I had an assistant producer who travelled around with Tony and Elaine. You would think that we had a lot of time to plan stuff, but we didn't really, because sincerely, the journey was driven by the contributors. So we didn't know which routes they were going to take. We didn't know how they were going to take these routes, and we didn't know at what times anything was going to happen. So, I can honestly say I was probably the most tired I've ever been working on that job. And in fact, there were certain points where I would have rather have been back on the island. At least I got to stay in one place. But yeah, the whole journey was very exciting and very tricky to follow because of the journey being so led by the contributor. And again, it was kind of, I think it's one of the only times I've worked on something, and probably one of the only shows that I've seen that is done so authentically in the way that they can choose their journey. They get given a start point, get from London, get to Singapore. There's a couple of countries that we can't let you pass through, but otherwise fill your boots and off you go. And so we had we had the A7S, we had the FS5, we also had GoPros and the GoPro Karma, which was great because it was great for all those times where they were sprinting and we could just sort of run around them and at least keep something usable, and it would just be a case of myself and my AP just sprinting past them and trying to catch up with them and sort of or try and get ahead of their journey as much as we could. But yeah, every part of it, every taxi they got into, every bus they got onto or train, it was totally organic. So we just had to react all the time to the moves they were making, and sometimes the moves that they were making were just so random. It was just a case of just go with it, really.
Yeah, fabulous series. And interesting that you were shooting on an A7S, because most people, I think, would assume that you'd be using the FS7 rather than the A7S. But, I use the A7S quite a lot, and people are a bit sniffy about it because they think it's more of a stills camera. And obviously you've got sound issues with it. But, why were you using such a small camera? And what did it give you? What advantages did it give you?
Yeah, so the advantages of using that camera is that you could blend in very easily and look like a tourist, mostly. Because of the nature of the type of adventure they were on, and because of the methods that they were going to travel, you couldn't delay anything that they were doing as a result of your equipment. It's a race and there's a cash prize at the end. So we couldn't be delaying them because we needed to get in the perfect position and, cram into a taxi with all these other people or onto these buses, which in some of these countries, there's 2 seats, but they sell 3 tickets for the 2 seats. And there's just no space, and then there's someone sat on the floor in the footwell and someone's crammed next to you. And you've got to keep all of the equipment on you because you can't put it under the bus because it'll have gone by the time you get to the next stop. So we needed something that was small and compact and that we could, just grab very easily. It didn't necessarily mean it was very easy to operate all the time, but it was easy. It made it a lot easier in the sense that we could just hop on and off trains, deal with the explanation of what we were doing afterwards rather than getting stopped by, if you appear with the FS7. Some of these places, no one's going to let you get on the train, and all of a sudden your contributors are going to be really upset. So, we had a lot of advantages using something so small, really. And obviously, if you're shooting for 52 days solid as well, your back also thanks you.
Yes. The issue around the uncontrollable situations really works when you've got small cameras, really. So let's, given what the time is, let's move swiftly from the uncontrollable to the hugely controllable Harlots, and which is currently on BBC Two. Wonderful series, looks amazing. So we're going to look at a clip, and then perhaps you can explain how the role of the DOP works on that series.
We should go back inside. Oh. They will think I did it.
Come on.
While the moon does shine clear, I will mourn my sweet dear. Over mountains, clear fountains. shine clear, and the river does flow. The fair maid of the morning has many a foe.
Wonderful series, and a great sense of period and drama and emotion, and all being captured thanks to obviously a big team effort, but thanks to the photography and lighting. So talk us through your method for how you achieved that.
It's such a good series, you're right. I mean, so many good female characters, which is what I really love about it. It's interesting when I did episodes 4, 5, and 6 of series 3. So what's really interesting, I think, is it's called like a block 2. So I'm the block 2 DP. So I think what's really interesting when you get into the world of TV shooting wise is that you're, as a second block or a third block DP, you're sort of treading a tightrope, if you like, between because the lead DP has come on, done the first few episodes and set up a certain look. Obviously with Harlots, it was in season 3, so it already was established a certain look. So you're matching something that has already gone before you, but you can also, with your director, stamp your sort of look on it as well. So, but that does mean that that's kind of a tightrope that you're walking, because you can't go too far out the bounds of the sort of visual landscape that's already been set up. So yeah, it was really fun to work with. And that's a really interesting clip, I think, because she'd fallen off the stair balcony in the episode before, which was shot by someone else. And so then we pick up her at the bottom of the stairs. And so certain things have already been set up by another DP, like where she falls, and the other director, of course, where she falls and the lighting. And so there's a certain amount of matching, but also an example, I guess, of us putting our own stamp on it was that we wanted, the director I work with, we wanted to have this breath, this emotional breath, where one of the main characters is obviously tremendously injured. And so we use shift and tilt lenses to have that beats at the beginning where there's, parts of her that are in focus and out of focus. So that was an example of where we could sort of set our own look on it, but still we sort of had to keep with what they'd done. And, we cheated a little bit, like they sort of made her fall quite near a wall. And so I was like, well, it's a bit close to the wall. If we cheat her this way a bit, then the lighting will be a bit better. And then suddenly I had the scene where everyone crowds in and discovers her. So because she was so close to the wall, we then had trouble with all these other. But I think, you can cheat a lot in film and TV. And as you go on and get more experience, what you learn is how much you can really cheat. Loads more than you actually ever thought. I think when you start out, you think, I've got to be really, strict with where the key light is and where, and my continuity of lighting as you go around and do your coverage. But what you realize as you go through your career is that you just cheat. And so if you're outside, this way can be backlit and so can that way be backlit. And who cares? Yeah, as long as it,
Two suns. We're in Star Trek land. So, I mean, it sounds like, there's so much skill and knowledge there, but a lot of problem solving as well, sort of small little problems that you're trying to build this big jigsaw to make the perfect imagery.
Yes, absolutely. And as the cinematographer, you're also working with all the other departments. So, everybody, which is what I love about it. You never get a dull moment on set when you're the cinematographer. So, working with visual effects, working with, that blood that's sort of by her head. I mean, I'd never seen them use this before, but art department had like a gel. It was like a gel, so they just slapped it down and then picked it back up. So there was no, there's no wiping up of blood or anything. But then visual effects just enhance it, and it's like, wow, that's it's amazing. So I think it's key to be able to collaborate with all those different departments.
And were you operating as well on Harlots?
Yes, I operated, and then I had a second camera operator as well, and sometimes Steadicam operator. So, and with a big scene like that, when you've got all the reactions, and then you've got the whole cast there, basically, it's really important to be getting all those reactions at the same time. So the key as a cinematographer is trying to work out what you can shoot at the same time. Often you can't sort of do things like a wide and a tight at the same time, because sound have a problem with that, obviously. So it's really knowing when to be able to shoot with two cameras. And sometimes, like in the Letdown, if the rooms were too small, it would have taken longer to set up the second camera than just to get on and shoot with one camera. So it's knowing that balance between when to use two and when not to use two.
Brilliant. So time for some questions. People have actually sent in some questions, which is a major plus. So one of the questions, which goes back to how we started this conversation, which was, are there any particular sources that you might be able to recommend that people might be able to find technical advice, cameras, lenses, that sort of thing? Do you have a go-to place? I mean, obviously it's all in your head as well, but are there interesting sources of this, be it people or websites or books?
I mean, I always read when I started, I always read American Cinematographer magazine. Yeah. George, I don't know if you read that, but it's got so many great articles about all sorts of films that are going on, and lots of technical stuff, if you're really interested in lighting, there's lots of behind the scenes lighting. And I think even now they've got a huge digital archive of all their old, so if you get some sort of digital subscription, I think you can access the archives of all the old magazines, so you can look back on your favorite films and see how they were shot. So I've always read that, and I think that's a really good resource.
Yeah, and I think sort of going back to what Nicola said before, so the best experience you can get is just to practice and have a go. And I always say that I've sort of spent 20 years getting it wrong in a hope that one day I will eventually get it right, but I'm not there yet. And that kind of, everything that you do, you just need to keep practicing. There's so much now. I mean, when I started out, we didn't say pre-internet, that makes me sound really old, but we certainly didn't have YouTube and all the stuff now that you can just tap into. And there's so many people on there who are doing amazing things, even at sort of really amateur level. You sort of look and think, wow, how on earth have they pulled that out the bag? And there's so many tutorials online now, and of course there's lots of TV wise and sort of there's lots of online resources. I know the RTS are doing various things like this and other masterclasses and screen skills. And there's lots of online stuff out there, particularly during lockdown. There were so many masterclasses being done online that I know there's a huge back catalogue there you can access.
Brilliant. So I've got a very specific question now for you, George, which was how did you work with sound and the A7S?
So we had A10 microphones, so they were recording separately to a hard drive, and we had a top mic that we used on the A7S as sort of a guide track. But yeah, the contributors wore A10 microphone packs, which were recording 24/7 pretty much. And we also had RAP had a little mixer that worked with those. He was very skillfully operating alongside, taking notes and running around with the camera as well sometimes, and doing everything else. So it really was. The whole thing was very much sort of, use the kit, get on with it, follow and capture as much as you can in the best way that you possibly can.
Because of course we're talking about photography today, but you can be shooting some lovely pictures, and if your sound's rubbish, then you're really done for. It's completely unusable, and I think that that's kind of especially important in factual television. That people worry a lot about, and so they should, about the pictures, and sound often comes second, and we end up having issues when we get into the edit. So do you have any tips for that, both of you, because you've also done documentary as well? George, do you want to go first?
Can I just say what George does? What George does, having done a little bit of what you do, I think it's incredible. You're doing like 5 people's jobs at once, so I don't know how
I
you
could make it look like you did, Nicola. So Yeah,
So,
I think with sorry, Emma. I think with regards to sound, it's something which I will put my hands up and say it still petrifies me now, to be honest. It's, soundmen know and women know a dark art which I would never claim to be an expert at. Everything that I do with regards to sound is very crude. Like I say, we had the A10s on Race Across the World. Usually anything else I'm shooting, I've got a radio mic, a couple of radio mics maybe. If I'm shooting something that needs anything more complicated than that, then I would argue that I need a sound operator to help me out, and I'll be the first person to say that I need one of those. You can only do so much, that's the thing, and something does have to give. Particularly in the role that I'm doing, where you're dealing with editorial, you're dealing with pictures. You need to have good sound. You need to make sure the contributors are okay. You need to make sure what you're doing is safe. You need to deal with consent. There's so many elements of what you need to do that you can't. It's impossible for one person or two people to keep on top of all those things to absolute perfection throughout, and something does have to give, and sometimes things don't work out. But if you're following the story and you're doing your best you can, and you've got something in some of the jobs that I work on anyway, then that's the best you can hope for. And if you need the sound to be absolutely bang on, and you need to be working on something where you've got crowds of people and you've not got a sound operator, then you are going to struggle, because like as you rightly said, Emma, if you've got no sound, you've got no show.
So one last question we've just got time for, and it's a really specific question for you, Nicola, that somebody is shooting their final piece for their degree on a Munro in Scotland in the middle of winter. How can you make it look amazing, or she make it look amazing?
In Scotland, it's good. I think the
really cold.
The landscape is going to be incredible, though. So I would say pick your times of day, so work out exactly when it's going to look good and go out there and shoot it in the dawn, or, when the sun's going down, or, and use what you've got. I think that's what documentary always taught me. I'm not kind of the DP who, if I do drama now, I don't sort of black it all out and then start again with my lights. I'd much prefer to use a location as the best it is in reality, and pick the right time of day to do it. And I think documentary taught me that. So use what you've got, I would say. And I've traveled around the world like George with one reflector and one little panel light. And you work out that you've just got to use what's there and at the right time. So observe it and then use what you've got. Scotland, it's going to be amazing landscape. So use wide angles.
Excellent. Well, I think that last question sums up beautifully, the job that you both do, which is a highly skilled and very pragmatic problem-solving job, which delivers brilliant pictures. And thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your expertise with everybody here. And I no doubt that we've left people with lots of insight and lots of questions that they will no doubt be firing through over the next few days, I imagine. But anyway, thank you so much for your time, and good luck in your next projects as we wend our way through lockdown again. And it feels like the perfect time to escape, doesn't it? To somewhere wild like Baku or an island.
It really does.
So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for having us.